Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. What a delight. We've got a cast of thousands this morning. We are going to be talking with Marlon Miller. You know him from Just Plain Values Publishing and JPV Press. And Marlon, I would love for you to introduce our special guest today.
Well, that would be great, and thank you for having us back. My wife Lisa and I had the joy of getting to know the Gagnon family, and honestly, I'm not exactly sure how many years it's been. We've been following them on social media for quite a while, and their heart is very, very on track with our heart in terms of the passion for adoption and special needs and orphanages overseas and just all that sort of work. And my wife finally kind of prodded me to basically reach out to the Gagnon family from Arizona and say if there would ever be anything that we could do to help them spread their message and share the work that they are doing, that we would love to do that. And I'll actually let Stacy share her side of that story, but they basically said, hey, what a fantastic answer to prayer, that they had been talking about that. And so we kind of jumped down this road, and the book that we're going to talk about soon is actually fruit of that. So.
Stacy, I am very curious to hear your side of that, how your paths crossed. And good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell me a little bit about how you crossed the paths with the Millers.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was an interesting conversation in the beginning. Marlon had reached out with Lisa, and I have been encouraged about writing a book, and definitely felt like, I'm not a writer. I think the only one that reads my stuff is my mom. Then I started realizing as my blog gained popularity that, I did have a message, even though I felt inadequate maybe in what I was saying. And so, when I spoke with Marlon and Lisa, I felt really confident that my family could produce a children's book that would have a message for all kids. And so when we looked at doing a book, it was to do a book as a family. And so we were super excited to have the opportunity to do something like this and share a message on a bigger and grander scale. My husband and I both started out as school teachers, and so we have such a passion and a heart for kids. And we feel like we understand how kids' thoughts are and the direction that they go and what they like to see. So it felt natural to go that way with what we were teaching.
I love that it says written by the Gagnon family. Tell us, who is the Gagnon family? Let's hear about the members of your family.
Wow, that could take a whole segment in itself.
That's why we're having you on for 2 days.
But, I will tell you, honestly, when my husband and I first got married, I did not want children. I did go into a career working with children, but I felt like, I think I'm good just, being married and maybe doing missions or something like that.
So teaching children kind of talked you out of having any of your own.
Well, maybe that, and also just watching my mother as a single mother raise us, I thought, wow, this is really difficult.
Work, yes.
Exactly, and maybe the fear of, I didn't want to ruin a child either. So,
right, we all step into it like that. What changed your mind, Stacy?
I conceded. My husband really wanted children, and I was good. I knew, I'm like, I could be a parent. I could do this. And so we had 2 children, and we were done. And that's always the famous last words in my home is, we're finished now. What ended up moving us into doing foster care was I was teaching 3rd grade at the time in a public school, and I had a student come to class who in the middle of the day completely broke down sobbing at his desk. And so I pulled him outside and I asked him, what's going on? Why, are you okay? And he just said, I was taken from my home late last night. I was put into a new home. I don't know the bus I'm supposed to ride. I don't even know the lady's name I'm staying with. And I remember just feeling such a devastation for him and telling my husband, you know what, we have room for one. We can do this. We could do foster care and support kids in foster care. And so those are kind of the famous last words. We now have 9 children in my home.
Oh, my goodness.
So each of my kids comes with different story and different things, but each has been the most incredible gift and blessing in my home. And I am so glad that God showed me that I wasn't supposed to stop at 2.
Right, right. Was that child able then to come live in your home, or that he was the spark that got you interested in having more children in your home?
He was the catalyst for
Yes.
opening our home. The process itself takes 6 months to a year, and at that point, he had already moved on
Yes.
to another situation.
So interesting to be talking to you. I taught second grade, but when I was doing student teaching, I worked with a gal who, I still remember her name. She was a first grade teacher doing student teaching for her, and her 2 children at home had both been students of hers who were in terrible situations, and she and her husband were able to adopt them. And so it's so amazing to cross paths with yet another person who that's your story.
Absolutely, and the system is really moving towards encouraging teachers. If you are a school teacher and one of your students goes into care, you can sign up as a kinship placement until you become licensed. So they've changed that law, and that's something they realize and recognize that teachers have a relationship with students and children that others in the community do not.
It's a unique situation. Who better to know these children and their deep down needs and be able to meet those needs than the person who has been entrusted with being their teacher for, more hours in the day than their own parents would see them in the morning and at night.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful to hear that those are changed. So 0 to 9, that's a pretty quick acceleration. How did you get from 0 your own 2 and now 9?
We had our 2 biological children. And then as we started the process, and we really started looking at what was best for our family and listening to other wise foster parents, we recognized that we wanted to have children under our youngest. This keeps birth order, but it also is a safety precaution. We wanted to make sure that our biological children were also safe. And so we also knew that it was not easy. And so when you start jumping in, we didn't want to jump in with a teen that was, with very young children and not do right by the teenager. We wanted to set up our home to be successful for whatever children that came into our home.
Did you sit down as a family and make this decision together so that the children were in on it?
We did not when they were younger because they were 4 and 2.
Right.
And so there wasn't that conversation.
It's like bringing home a baby.
Absolutely. But as they got older, we have family discussions and meetings all the time, and did as we did adopted or as we did foster care, we would sit and make the decision as a family. So absolutely, my children have been invested in what we're doing and a part of the decision making, but they also are given the opportunity at an age that they're capable of making that decision.
There's so many, we never know what we don't know, so many trials and challenges that fostered children have gone through, particularly if they've been fostered for some time. Some of them have very, very sad stories. So they require a little extra TLC, and just wondering how you manage to meet all those needs and then just do the regular packing lunch. Being a mom, being a parent is exhausting when absolutely everything is going great. When you have some extra emotional challenges to address, how do you do that, Stacy?
It's interesting. I have said this before. Foster care and adoption ruined my life, and in a good way. We were not meant to live the American dream. As a believer, I'm called to follow Christ, and that means I'm called to do hard things. And I believe that we have a message out there that says that we are supposed to be living this dream, and our children are supposed to have all these things, and we do all these things. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that my kids know the Lord, and that for me and my husband, that we're united in what we do, and that we're serving the Lord. And so it is absolutely hard, and my kids don't have everything, and my kids don't do everything. But the things that I've let go in order to manage and do the things that are important, we haven't missed those things. And so I think that it's really a hard leap when you're looking at foster care and adoption to understand that it is not the job of the child coming into my home to fulfill something for me.
Yeah.
My job is to meld my family around this child and support them and keep them safe and let them know they're worthy and loved. And that is absolutely not easy. But it is going to be something that is a sacrifice for your family. But I'm teaching my children sacrificial love within the safety and confines of my home so that they'll go out in the community someday and they'll understand that God didn't call them to live the American dream. God called them to follow him. And it doesn't look like the American dream.
What better thing can we give a child than to have the safety and security of knowing that they are loved? That's, no really toy is going to match up to that.
Absolutely. And the simplicity of it is we sit down and eat dinner as a family. Mm-hmm. We do everything together as a family. And, I am not downing all of the sports and all of that because I grew up doing that. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I can tell you that my kids are going to pick time with their family and family dinner time, and those things is something they remember from childhood over playing, basketball year round.
Organized sports and
exactly. Or, all the little clubs, we overschedule our children. And so we tend to move the other way. We can't. As such a large family, we do things as a family.
I bet you've got a backyard, and I bet they have a lot of fun playing with each other.
Absolutely. It's a huge backyard. That's what I always say is that I can do this because I have so much land for them to run around on.
So it's not like they're not getting their exercise and they're not learning fundamentals. They're doing the old way.
We're very different in, I think, respects to a lot of families. I mean, we're not big on electronics. My children that have had trauma in their background, we don't have Xbox, we don't have those kind of things because it actually triggers parts of their brain that is damaging. And so we don't always look a lot like typical family, I guess.
What's the time like as a child comes into your home and starts to just acclimate and become a gagnon? Their response to being loved, I would think a child is pretty suspicious in the beginning, like, why am I here? Why did you want me? There's got to be a little bit of transition time. Talk to me about that.
Oh, absolutely. And the first thing we do is we definitely are preparing our kids for what this is going to look like, because they're going to be asked to share their toys, asked to share their parents, asked to, it takes a lot of time and energy when a child first comes in your home. I will say the first few weeks are typically honeymoon. And so, you see a child that is pretty shut down usually. But what I've seen that's truly beautiful is that my kids cue in and they cue the foster children that come to our home. So and I sometimes wonder how people do foster care without other children in their home, because they're watching how my kids relate to the adult in the home. And they're seeing that, oh, wow, that adult does this. Or, wow, they're not afraid of that adult. And so that trust and love, I think, they see mirrored in my kids. And that helps them feel more secure and safe. And so, and we definitely are Darren and Stacy. We're not replacing their parents because foster care is reunification. And so it's just saying, like, hey, I'm here. We're here to help your parents get well. This is how we position ourselves so that we're not trying to replace mom and dad.
Right. But does that not break your heart then when you have to then have a child that you've had in your home suddenly go back to their mom and dad, which is the goal, to reunite that family, but it also now tears apart, in a way, another family, your own family. How do you handle that?
Absolutely. Well, for one, my kids go into this knowing that reunification is the goal. My children in my home. Now, does that make that easy for me as the mother and my husband as the father? No, it rips you apart. Absolutely. I mean, I've spent many tears crying in the shower over kids through my home. Mm-hmm. But I think at the end of the day, I know that as the adult, I can shoulder this pain and this heartache much better than a child can. Mm. And so it's just going into it knowing, like, this is what I'm called to do and this is what I'm supposed to do, and it's going to hurt. It's absolutely going to hurt.
We're speaking with Stacey Gagnon. She is one of the authors of Cowboy Joel and the Wild Wild West. I promise you we will be talking about this book. We've also got Marlon Miller here from JPV Press, and we're going to take a short break. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.